I still remember the sound of her footsteps moving quietly through the hallway before sunrise every single morning. When the world was still asleep and dreams were still floating in the air, she would already be awake, carrying the invisible weight of an entire family on her tired shoulders, never complaining, never slowing down, never asking for anything in return. Her hands were always busy, cooking, cleaning, fixing, comforting, loving, and holding together a home that would have fallen apart without her. And yet, she moved through it all with a softness that felt like warmth on a cold winter night. As a child, I never understood her sacrifices. I only knew that when I woke up, breakfast was ready, my clothes were clean, my school bag was packed, and somehow the house always felt safe, even when life outside felt uncertain. She was my quiet hero, though I did not know it yet. Every wrinkle on her face carried a story of patience, endurance, heartbreak, and hope. Every tired breath carried years of giving everything to others while keeping almost nothing for herself. And yet, she smiled. She smiled in a way that made the world feel lighter, in a way that told me everything would be okay, even when she herself was breaking inside. There were nights when I would wake up and see the lights still on in the kitchen, and I would find her sitting there, alone, staring into space, lost in thoughts she never shared, carrying worries she never spoke about, protecting us from storms we never even knew existed. She gave up her dreams so we could chase ours. She stayed silent so we could speak. She stayed strong so we could feel safe. And in doing so, she slowly disappeared behind the role of mother, leaving her own identity buried beneath responsibility, duty, and unconditional love. Time moved forward, as it always does, and I grew older, busier, more distant, caught up in my own struggles, ambitions, and distractions, believing there would always be time to say thank you, always time to show love, always time to notice. But life has a way of teaching lessons when we least expect it. One evening, I came home late, exhausted from a long day, and found her sitting quietly on the couch, her eyes distant, her posture weaker than I remembered. She looked up at me and smiled, but it was not the same smile. Something had changed. Her voice was softer, slower, almost fragile, as if each word required effort. And yet she still asked me about my day, about my work, about my worries, as if her own pain did not exist. That was the moment I realized how much of her life she had spent making space for everyone else while shrinking her own. That night, I could not sleep. Memories flooded my mind, moments I had ignored, words I had not said, gratitude I had postponed, and love I assumed she already knew. But love unspoken is love unheard, and in that silence, regret grows louder than any scream. I began to see her not just as my mother, but as a woman who had once been young, full of dreams, full of hopes, full of desires. And I wondered what had happened to that girl, and how many of those dreams had quietly died so mine could live. I wondered how many times she had felt alone while standing in a room full of people. How many times she had swallowed her tears so mine would never fall. How many times she had chosen patience over anger, kindness over frustration, love over exhaustion. And the weight of that realization pressed heavy on my heart. That was the night I decided everything had to change. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, and for the first time in my life, I stood in the kitchen before she did, watching the sun slowly rise through the window, and I realized how peaceful and quiet this hour truly was. This was her hour, the time she spent alone preparing the world for everyone else, and for the first time, I felt the depth of her solitude. When she walked in and saw me standing there, she looked surprised, then confused, and finally she smiled, that familiar, gentle smile. But this time, I saw it differently. This time, I saw the exhaustion behind it, the strength beneath it, the sacrifice within it. I made her sit down, and I cooked breakfast with hands that trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of understanding. She watched quietly, saying nothing, and in that silence we shared something new, something deeper than words. For the first time, our roles shifted. She was no longer only the giver, and I was no longer only the receiver. Days turned into weeks, and I began to slow down enough to notice the little things, the way she paused when standing up, the way her breath changed when climbing stairs, the way her eyes carried stories she still would not share. And slowly, she began to open up. She spoke of dreams she once had, places she wanted to see, things she wanted to become, fears she had carried alone, and hopes she still held onto quietly. And I listened, not as a child, but as a witness to a life of devotion. I listened as she told me about moments of doubt, nights of loneliness, and days when giving up felt easier than continuing. Yet she never stopped. Because love gave her strength, because responsibility gave her purpose, because hope gave her reason. And I realized something powerful. True love is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not seek praise. It simply gives and gives and gives until there is nothing left to give. And still, it gives more. As time passed, our bond deepened, and for the first time, I began to truly see her, not just as a mother, but as a soul, as a human being, as a woman who deserved to be heard, respected, cherished, and celebrated. And with that understanding came a promise I made in silence, that she would never again feel invisible, that she would never again carry her burdens alone, that she would finally receive the love she had given so freely for a lifetime. The days slowly began to feel different. The house that once carried only routine now carried warmth, conversation, and presence. And for the first time in years, we were truly together, not just living under the same roof, but sharing the same emotional space. We started walking together in the evenings as the sky painted itself with soft colors and the world slowed down just enough for us to breathe, and she would tell me stories of her childhood, of the dreams she once whispered to the stars, and the life she imagined before responsibility changed everything. And as she spoke, I could hear the girl she once was still alive inside her, waiting to be seen. I began to realize that healing does not happen in grand moments. It happens in small, consistent acts of love, in listening, in patience, in presence, and in choosing to show up every single day. Some nights, she would sit quietly by the window, watching the world pass by, and I would sit beside her in silence, because sometimes the greatest comfort is not words, but simply being there. And in those quiet moments, I felt something shift inside me, a deep understanding of what truly matters in life. Not success, not wealth, not recognition, but connection, love, and the people who stand beside us when the lights fade and the noise disappear. Then one evening, she fell. It was sudden and terrifying. One moment she was standing, and the next she was on the floor, her breath shallow, her eyes wide with fear. And in that moment, time stopped. Every memory, every regret, every unspoken word rushed through my mind as I held her trembling hands and whispered that everything would be okay, even though I wasn't sure. The hospital lights were harsh and cold, and the waiting room felt endless. And in that silence, I faced the fear I had been avoiding. The fear of losing her, the fear of living in a world without her presence, the fear of realizing too late what she truly meant to me. Hours passed, and every second felt like a lifetime. And when the doctor finally spoke, his words were calm but heavy, telling us that her body was tired, that years of sacrifice had taken their toll, and that now she needed rest, care, and love more than ever. And in that moment, I made a promise that the rest of her life would be filled with peace, that she would no longer carry the weight of everyone else, that she would finally be allowed to simply be. Recovery was slow and fragile, but hope returned with each small step she took, and with every smile that slowly found its way back to her face. We learned patience together. We learned gratitude together. We learned to celebrate small victories and cherish quiet moments. And I saw her strength not in her ability to endure pain, but in her willingness to keep loving despite it. As time passed, the house transformed. Laughter replaced silence, conversation replaced distance, presence replaced distraction. And for the first time in years, our home felt alive. She began to paint again, something she hadn't done in decades, and I watched as colors returned not just to her canvas, but to her spirit. She began to laugh more deeply, sleep more peacefully, dream more freely. And in those moments, I saw the woman she once was slowly return to her. Not as she was, but as something